Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to second quarter 2020 Momo Inc.'s earnings conference call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. After the management's prepared remarks, there will be a question and answer session, at which time, if you wish to ask a question, you may press star 1 on your telephone. Please note, this conference is being recorded today. I would now like to hand the conference over to your first speaker today, Ms. Kathy Tang. Thank you. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, operator. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Momo's second quarter 2020 earnings conference call. The company's results were released earlier today and are available on the company's IR website. On the call today from Momo are Mr. Tang Yan, Co-founder, Chairman, and Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Wang Li, President and Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Wang Yu, Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Tantan, and Mr. Jonathan Zhang, Chief Financial Officer. They will discuss the company's business operations and highlights, as well as the financial and guidance. They will all be available to answer your questions during the Q&A session that follows. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that this call may contain forward-looking statements made under the Safe Harbor provisions of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Such statements are based on management's current expectations and current market and operating conditions and relate to the events that involve known or unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors, all of which are difficult to predict and many of which are beyond the company's control, which may cause the company's actual results, performance, or achievements to differ materially from those in the forward-looking statements. Further information regarding these and other risks, uncertainties, and factors is included in the company's filings with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The company does not undertake any obligation to update any forward-looking statement as a result of new information, future events, or otherwise, except as required under law. I will now pass the call over to Mr. Tang. I will translate for him. Mr. Tang, please.
大家好，感谢参加今天的电话会。Q2 对我们来说是个忙碌的季度，尽管疫情对经济造成的影响仍未消散，但我们看到陌陌和探探的用户活跃度已经在稳步回升。随着流量逐步恢复正常，2季度起，团队可以更加专注于长期战略目标的执行。下面我很快介绍一下本季度的运营和财务情况，之后将为大家更新一下今年的重点工作，以及未来几个季度针对这些重点项目的执行计划。
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our conference call today. Q2 was a busy quarter for us. Although the economic impact from the pandemic still lingers, we have seen user engagements improving at a steady pace on Momo and Tantan. With things gradually coming back to normal on the traffic side, starting from Q2, our teams have stepped up the efforts to drive toward our strategic goals. Now let me quickly walk you through the key operating and financial results for the quarter. We are also going to give you an update on the company's priorities for the year and how we are going to approach them in the coming few quarters.
首先，回顾一下财务情况。2020年2季度总营收38.7亿人民币，同比下降7%，环比增长8%。调整后营业利润10.4亿人民币，对应营业利润率27%。不包含探探亏损，陌陌主 App 调整后营业利润11亿人民币，对应营业利润率33%。探探方面，我很高兴地看到本季度直播业务的测试已经开始释放明显的动能。尽管疫情导致约会活动低迷，使会员服务受到负面影响，但是得益于直播的快速增长，探探2季度的收入达到了5.17亿人民币，同比增长82%，环比增长35%。随着营收的增长，本季度探探调整后净亏损也收窄至7079万人民币。
Firstly, a brief overview of the financial performance. For the second quarter 2020, total revenue was 3.87 billion RMB, down 7% year-on-year, but up 8% quarter-over-quarter. Adjusted operating income for the quarter was 1.04 billion RMB, representing a 27% profit margin. Excluding Tantan's loss, adjusted operating income for the core Momo was 1.1 billion RMB, or a 33% profit margin. On Tantan's side, I'm glad to see that our testing with the live broadcasting service started gaining traction in the second quarter. Although the membership service was struck hard by the COVID and the associated weak dating activities, total revenues at Tantan still grew 82% year-over-year and 35% sequentially to 517 million for the second quarter, driven by the rapidly ramping up live broadcasting revenue. As top line improved, Tantan's adjusted net loss also narrowed down to 70.79 million for the second quarter.
接下来具体介绍本季度的其他情况。首先是运营指标。二季度随着疫情影响的减弱，国内隔离封锁措施明显放松，人们对社交的兴趣逐渐恢复。二季度Momo主 App MAU 净增350万，6月达到 1.1 亿人，用户总时长较上季度明显提高。随着平台月活的恢复，二季度Momo付费用户数达到890万，较一季度净增30万。
Now a deeper dive into other aspects of the quarter. First, on operating metrics. As the COVID impacts began to tail out in the second quarter, and the lockdown measures got substantially relaxed within China, the social sentiment also recovered gradually. The number of MAU grew 3.5 million during the quarter to 111.5 million in June. Total time spent also saw substantial improvement from the previous quarter. As the MAUs of the platform recovered, the number of paying users on Momo also saw a 300,000 net addition from the first quarter to 8.9 million in the second quarter of 2020.
接下来说一下探探。探探活跃用户在春节假期后的2周呈现迅速增长的趋势，但由于新冠疫情的持续扩散升级，导致约会需求下降，用户增长势头因此受到影响。与社交娱乐体验较多元的Momo有所不同，二季度之前，Momo几乎纯粹是将线上匹配转化为线下约会的产品，因此与Momo相比，探探受疫情的影响更大，恢复也较晚。5月初，中国绝大部分地区解除封锁，探探的活跃用户数随后开始出现回升趋势。团队目前正在努力改善获客效率，并丰富平台产品体验。随着在这2方面的努力逐渐起效，我们对探探疫情后的用户增长前景充满信心。提升获客效率，完善平台产品体验，这也是探探未来几个季度最重要的2项工作。
Now turning to Tantan. Tantan experienced rapid user growth during the 2 weeks following the Chinese New Year holiday. However, the growth momentum was disrupted by the continuous spreading of the coronavirus and the waning dating sentiment as a result of that. Unlike Momo, where a big variety of alternative social entertainment experiences is available, Tantan was almost purely about converting online matches to offline dating activities before Q2. Therefore, compared to Momo, Tantan was struck harder by the COVID, and the recovery also happened later than it did on the Momo core. By early May, the lockdown in most parts of China had been lifted, and therefore we were able to see a recovering trend in the number of active users on Tantan. We are very optimistic about the user growth outlook on Tantan post-COVID as the team continued to improve its user acquisition efforts and enrich the product experience on the platform. These are also the 2 most important priorities for Tantan team in the coming few quarters.
探探 Q2 付费用户数390万人，环比减少30万人。除 DAU 下降因素外，受疫情影响，用户对订阅服务付费意愿下降，导致付费率下降。同时，付费率的恢复 也需要相对 DAU 更长的时间。以上因素导致付费用户恢复在2季度暂时滞后于 DAU 的回暖。进入 Q3 以后，付费用户数已经重新回到稳步上升的轨道。王宇稍后为大家详细展开。
Tantan's paying users for the second quarter totaled 3.9 million, a 300K decrease from the previous quarter. On top of the decrease in DAU, COVID also hurt the users' motivation to pay for the subscription services, leading toward a decrease in the paying ratio, which is also taking more time to recover than the overall DAU. Such an effect has caused the paying user recovery to temporarily lag behind the resumption of DAU growth in Q2. In Q3, the paying users have already gone back to the growth track. Wang Yu will have more details for you a bit later.
鉴于目前疫情好转，团队可以更加专注于长期战略目标的执行。接下来，我向大家介绍一下未来几个季度的工作重点。
Now that we are entering into the post-COVID mode, the team are able to focus fully on the strategic priorities for the long term. Now, let me take you through the updates on several important projects that will stay on management's agenda for the coming few months.
首先，最重要的是通过产品和运营方面的努力，更好地满足探探和陌陌用户的社交需求。在这方面，我们目前正在迈出关键的一步，丰富探探的产品体验。我们认为，如果想提高用户活跃以及长期留存，探探需要逐步丰富滑动配对这一核心场景之外的用户体验。去年底，探探进行了这方面的首次尝试，推出了闪聊。从 Q1 数据来看，闪聊对用户活跃度和收入都发挥了积极作用。取得初步成功之后 ，Q2 我们加快了探探产品创新的步伐。4月7号，探探全量上线了附近动态功能，这是提高探探用户社区体验很重要的一步，也为其他产品创新开拓了新跑道。4月中旬，我们开始加快另一项重要业务的测试，在探探上推出了直播服务。经过4个月的试运行，测试结果超出我们的预期，并且验证了我们早先的想法，即直播不仅可以成为强有力的收入引擎，还能够对核心约会场景起到很好的补充作用。尽管目前直播业务仍处于测试阶段，团队更关注产品和内容的提升，而非营收增长。但相信大家已经可以看到，探探作为公司的第二增长引擎，其潜力正在逐步释放。
First and foremost, improve the product and operations on Momo and Tantan in order to better serve the user's social demands. One of the critical steps we need to take on that front is to enrich the product experiences on Tantan. We have always believed that in order to drive better user engagement and improve long-term retention, Tantan needs to supplement the core swipe and match experience with richer features and services as alternatives. Late last year, Tantan introduced the Flash Chat experience, which was the first step toward that goal. It was proven in Q1 that Flash Chat played a positive role in driving user engagement as well as monetization. Off that success, we significantly accelerated the pace of product innovations on Tantan in the second quarter. On April the 7th, we fully rolled out the Nearby Post feature on Tantan, which is an important move in improving the community experience for Tantan users. It also extends the runway of exploring other product innovations down the path. In mid-April, we started accelerating the pace in testing another important service, the live broadcasting service on Tantan. Up until now, we've been 4 months into the pilot phase. The results obviously have exceeded our original expectations. It proves our earlier belief that live streaming can not only be a powerful revenue driver, but also complement the core dating experience in a very positive way. Although at this point we're still at the testing mode, and the team is focused on improving the product and content experience instead of driving monetization, it is already becoming clear that Tantan, as the second growth engine for the company, is beginning to gain traction.
除了附近动态和直播业务， 探探也在其他方面取得了很大的进展。王宇稍后会为大家做详细的介绍。
Besides the nearby posts and the live broadcasting service, Tantan is also making impressive progresses on multiple other fronts. Wang Yu will have more details for you a bit later.
现在很快介绍一下陌陌主 App 的情况。二季度，我们对平台的基础社交体验做了一系列优化，例如我们升级了新用户和回流用户的体验，以便他们更好地建立高质量的连接。我们还调整了推荐引擎，向一些老用户推送之前聊过的人，激活旧关系。这些举措旨在改善用户体验，并在用户结束长期社交隔离重返陌陌平台后提升用户留存度。6月，我们看到了新注册和回流用户的留存都有了显著增加。
Now a quick update on the core Momo. In the second quarter, we made several optimizations to the basic social experiences on the platform. For example, we upgraded the onboarding experience for the new users and resurrected users, making it easier for them to build meaningful connections. We also adjusted our recommendation engine to push dormant relationships to some of our old users in order to reactivate the conversations. These efforts aimed at enhancing the user experience and improving the retention when the users came aboard on Momo from the long period of social distancing. As a result, in June, we saw a meaningful improvement in the retention ratio for the new users and resurrected users.
最后，我想用几分钟时间分享一下公司正在进行的一项重要工作。众所周知，年初以来，疫情对宏观经济的影响，使陌陌主 App 的直播收入面临持续的压力。我们的高额付费用户中有相当一部分人是财务状况受疫情负面影响较大的私营企业主。我们认为宏观因素对于头部用户消费的负面影响未必很快能够消散。而过去2年，尤其是2019年下半年以来，陌陌主 App 的直播业务对于头部用户和主播的依赖度有所加深。考虑到当前的宏观环境，我们认为降低头部用户收入集中度，转而提升腰部用户消费是更为安全的选择。事实上，早在去年初，我们就尝试过促进腰部用户消费的一些措施。虽然这些尝试产生了一定的积极作用，但我们意识到公司仍需对产品和运营做出一系列更深层次的调整，才能够在降低集中度以及繁荣长尾内容生态方面取得实质性的进展。这些调整将广泛覆盖直播业务的多个环节，包括流量分配策略、产品设计以及内容运营，以及赛事安排和工会管理方式。王丽稍后会详细介绍调整方案。由于该方案涉及多个产品和运营层面，在短期，尤其是3季度，会对陌陌主 App 的直播收入和毛利率造成压力。但我们认为这一压力较为可控，因为探探和陌陌 VAS 的出色增长表现能够令公司整体收入在调整期保持相对平稳。而根据目前看到的趋势，我们预计陌陌主 App 的直播收入将会从4季度开始企稳，并逐步改善。更重要的是，我坚信过渡期后公司的收入结构在当前环境下将更具稳定性。同时，陌陌直播也会迎来一个更加长尾驱动且充满活力的生态圈，以此推动2021年以及未来的长期稳定增长。
Lastly, I'd like to spend a few minutes discussing an important endeavor that we have been undertaking lately. As many of you know, since the beginning of the year, the economic impacts from the COVID-19 have been pressuring the live broadcasting revenues at Momo Core. A considerable number of our high-paying users are private business owners whose financial conditions have been adversely affected by the pandemic. We believe that the macro factors may continue to be a headwind for the top spending. During the past couple of years, especially in the back half of 2019, Momo Core's live broadcasting business had become more reliant on the top of the pyramid users as well as the top of the pyramid broadcasters. In view of the current macro condition, we believe it is safer to reduce the revenue concentration on the top and move the spending more toward the middle layers within the pyramid. As a matter of fact, early last year, we already made some efforts to stimulate the middle cohort spending, which generated some positive outcome. However, more fundamental product and operational changes are needed in order to reduce the dependence on the top in a more meaningful way, and at the same time improve the long-tail content ecosystem. The adjustments will cover a wide range of areas within the live broadcasting ecosystem, including traffic direction strategies, product design, and content operations, as well as the way we manage the competition events and the agencies. Our President and CEO Wang Li will discuss the adjustment plan in more details later. As the plan involves changes on multiple product and operational fronts, short-term-wise, it may create some pressure on Momo Core's live broadcasting revenue and gross margin, especially in Q3. We believe the pressure should be quite manageable, as the strong growth from Tantan and the solid performance from Momo's VAS will keep the revenue relatively stable during the transition period, and we expect the live broadcasting revenue on the core to see gradual improvement in Q4. More importantly, I'm also a firm believer that when we walk out of this transition period, we're going to see a revenue structure that is more resilient in the current environment, as well as a vibrant and long-tail driven content ecosystem that supports long-term growth for 2021 and beyond.
最后，我很高兴宣布，今天董事会批准了多至3亿美金的股票回购计划。该计划可以令公司利用有吸引力的股价进行回购，从而提升股东价值。像公司过去历次分红方案一样，这次回购计划践行了我们不断追求股东利益最大化的承诺，以及管理层对公司未来业务发展的信心。感谢大家对陌陌团队的信任。接下来由王立总为大家做业务回顾。
Lastly, I'm pleased to announce that today our board approved a $300 million share repurchase plan. This program will allow the company to capitalize on attractive share prices to enhance shareholder value. Similar to the dividend payments that we've announced in the past, this share buyback plan demonstrates our long-term commitment to maximizing shareholder value, as well as management's confidence in the future of the business. Thank you for trusting Momo team. And here is Wang Zong to review the business updates. Wang Zong, please.
谢谢。接下来介绍一下我们在主要业务领域取得的进展。
Thanks. Now let me take you through the progresses we've made across our key business lines.
首先是直播业务。2020年2季度直播收入26亿人民币，同比下滑16%，环比增长12%。环比增长主要得益于探探直播业务的快速增长，其次是陌陌主 App 直播业务的逐渐回暖。有些投资人可能已经知道，4月中旬以来，探探一直在加速直播业务测试，测试结果令人十分满意。王宇稍后会详细介绍，我主要讲陌陌。
Firstly, on live broadcasting, total revenue from live broadcasting business for the second quarter 2020 was 2.6 billion RMB, down 16% from the same period last year, but up 12% from the previous quarter. The sequential increase was largely driven by the rapid growth from Tantan's live streaming service, and to a lesser degree, the gradual improvement in Momo Core's live broadcasting business. As many of you know, Tantan has been accelerating the testing of its live broadcasting service since mid-April. The testing results have been very encouraging. Wang Yu will share more details in his remarks later, so I will be mainly focused on the core Momo.
2季度，陌陌主站直播收入24.1亿元，同比下降22%，环比上涨4%。伴随主站流量的恢复，我们在2季度举办了几场赛事活动，目的在于测试用户，特别是高额付费用户消费情绪的恢复程度。尽管这些赛事带来了一定的收入增量，但我们能明显感觉到整体高额付费用户的消费意愿仍然低迷。根据我们的调研和对一些高额付费用户的随机访谈，他们当中有相当一部分人是制造业或贸易行业的私营企业主，生意主要分布在江浙、福建等沿海地区。鉴于全球范围的疫情形势仍然严峻，我们认为他们的财务状况可能需要一些时日才能得以全面好转。
Momo Core's live broadcasting revenues totaled 2.41 billion RMB for the second quarter, down 22% from the same period last year, but up 4% from last quarter. During the second quarter, as the traffic gradually recovered, we held a couple of events trying to test the water for the consumer sentiment, especially that among the top spenders. Although we did see some incremental revenue contribution from those events, we could clearly see that the overall spending sentiment from the top remained weak. According to our survey, as well as anecdotal conversations from some of our high-paying users, a significant portion of them own business in manufacturing and commerce industries in coastal regions such as Zhejiang and Fujian. It may take some time for these businesses to fully turn around due to the situation of the pandemic global-wise.
尽管未来几个季度整体宏观经济形势难以预测，作为平台运营商，我们认为可以通过一系列内部的生态调整，来确保直播业务在新的外部环境下持续健康成长。过去几个月的时间，团队对直播生态系统进行了详细的研究。接下来我和大家分享一下我们的想法。首先，正如唐总所说，过去几年陌陌的直播业务，无论是在供给还是需求端，收入和流量都呈现出向头部集中的趋势。造成这种情况的原因有许多，包括流量分配机制的自然演变、工会 KPI 的设置，以及一些刺激高额付费用户消费的互动玩法和运营手段。那这些变化导致对腰部和入门级主播的流量支持不足，进而引起长尾直播间内容质量下滑。拥有充满活力的长尾内容生态系统是陌陌作为社交平台的一个关键竞争优势。我们需要这个优势持续增强，而不是逐渐被削弱，尤其是在具有挑战性的宏观环境之下。
While it is hard to predict how the overall macro climate may develop in the coming few quarters, as the platform operator, we did take considerable efforts during the past couple of months to study what are some of the changes that we can effect within our own content ecosystem so that the live broadcasting business can continue to grow healthily in the new external environment. Now let me share some of the findings from our studies. First of all, like Tang Yan said, over the past couple of years, our live broadcasting business has become heavier on the top, both in terms of revenue contribution and in terms of traffic, on both supply side and demand side. Such a situation was due to a number of different reasons, including the evolution of our traffic allocation system, the way we set KPIs in the agency incentive program, as well as certain interactive features and operational efforts that we rolled out to boost top spending. As a result, middle and entry-level performers are getting insufficient traffic support, which further caused the content quality in long-tail showrooms to descend. Having a vibrant long-tail content ecosystem has been a key competitive advantage of Momo as a social platform. We need this advantage to be strengthened, not weakened, especially in a challenging macro environment.
认清这些问题后，我们制定了相应的解决方案，其中主要包括调整流量分配策略，资源由大房间向中腰部潜力主播的直播间倾斜，通过产品和玩法创新及配套运营活动加强长尾直播间的内容体验，调整工会 KPI 考核系统，并重塑菜式设计，由营收导向转为内容导向的运营策略，并为更多新人创造机会。同时，对那些短期可以刺激头部用户消费，但长期无益于内容生态系统的互动玩法和运营策略进行调整。
After identifying these issues, we have put together a plan to address them. Key things under the plan include adjusting the traffic allocation strategy to redirect the users from large channels to smaller ones, investing in new features and operational events to beef up the content experience in the long-tail showrooms, and adjusting the KPI system for agencies, as well as reinventing the competition events, with the purpose to focus less on revenue and more on content and supporting new talents. The plan also involves adjustments to certain interactive features and related operational policies that can be a strong stimulator for top spending, but long-term wise may not be beneficial for the content ecosystem.
调整计划短期会对陌陌主 app 的直播收入和毛利率造成一定压力，但 VAS 和探探强劲的增长势头 为我们进行结构性改革提供了良好的契机。因为这些业务将公司整体收入在转型期间保持基本稳定。
The adjustment plan could put some temporary pressure on both revenue and gross margin for Momo Core's live broadcasting business. However, the robust growth of the VAS business and the strong momentum from Tantan presents a good opportunity for us to carry out this structural reform because these business lines will keep the overall revenue of the company stable during the transition period.
截止到目前，调整计划已经实施了5周，平台的内容生态已经开始呈现初步的改善迹象。收入在8月初经历较大幅度震荡之后，目前也已经企稳。这些事实让我们有理由相信，影响最大的阶段已经过去。随着内容生态的向好，Momo主 App 的直播营收也会逐渐改善。
By now, we already have been 5 weeks into the program. The content ecosystem is now beginning to see some initial signs for improvement. Revenue, after experiencing strong volatilities in early August, also has stabilized. These facts give us the optimism that the worst of the impact should have been absorbed, and that live broadcasting revenue for the core should see gradual improvement as the content ecosystem continues to improve.
接下来讲下 VAS， 二季度 VAS 收入12亿元，同比增长27%。王宇稍后会介绍探探，我着重讲Momo主 App 的增值业务，不包含探探。2020年二季度 VAS 收入8.79亿元，同比增长32%。流量恢复和一些主要付费体验的持续提升，推动 VAS 收入环比增长10%。
Now turning to VAS, revenues from value-added service reached 1.2 billion RMB, up 27% year-over-year. Again, I'll be focusing on Momo's VAS business and leave Tantan's part to Wang Yu a bit later. Revenue from VAS on an ex-Tantan basis reached 879 million RMB for the second quarter of 2020, up 32% year-on-year. On a sequential basis, VAS revenues on the core grew 10%, driven by the recovery of traffic as well as the growth momentum from some of the key paying experiences within VAS.
二季度音视频社交娱乐体验持续推动 VAS 强劲增长，持续的增长动力源于团队在产品和运营方面的不断创新。例如，聊天时引入了一系列新的游戏化玩法，如开歌秀、好友买卖等。我们还对狼人杀的核心体验进行了改造，成功的将这款相对较早的使用场景带回到增长轨道。
During the second quarter, the audio and video social entertainment experiences continue to generate robust growth for VAS. The continuous momentum from the category was driven by innovative product and operational ideas from the team. For example, we introduced a few new mini-games into the chat room experience, such as Karaoke Show and Friends Trade. We also revamped the gameplays in the Werewolf experience, which successfully put this relatively older experience back onto the growth track.
在新的付费体验当中，赫兹作为一款独立语音交友 App， 缘分交友作为一款站内视频交友产品，二季度均持续取得良好的进展，两款产品的留存率稳步提升，为用户的持续增长奠定了良好的基础。同时，这也是这些新功能早期最重要的指标。除此之外，团队也在积极探索这些新产品蕴含的多种商业化机会。我们相信，这些新产品的收入贡献将持续提升，并为明年的营收增长提供动力。
Now within the bucket of new experiences, Herds, a standalone audio dating application, and Matchmaker, a video dating experience within the core Momo, continue to progress well in the second quarter. The retention ratios for both products improved steadily, which is the foundation of user growth and also the most important target for these early stage endeavors. At the same time, the team is also actively exploring different monetization opportunities within these new innovations. We believe the revenue contribution from the new bucket will continue to improve and become a meaningful driver next year.
接下来很快说下其他业务线情况。二季度移动营销业务收入从去年同期的7621万元降至3796万元，主要由于宏观经济状况以及我们在策略上主动降低了对该业务线的资源配置。联运游戏二季度呈持续下降趋势，未来几个季度的收入将围绕当前的收入水平波动。
Now briefly on other business lines. Mobile marketing revenue was 37.96 million RMB, down from 76.21 million RMB the same period last year. The decrease was a reflection of both macro headwinds and our strategy to underweight the line in terms of resource allocation this year. Jointly operated game business continued to trend down in Q2 and will likely fluctuate around the current level for the coming few quarters.
以上是陌陌主平台的业务回顾，接下来由王宇为大家介绍探探的产品和业务情况。
That's the business review of the core Momo. Now let me hand over to Mr. Wang Yu for a review of Tantan's product and business development. Mr. Wang, please.
Thanks. So let me briefly review Tantan's operational and business development in the past quarter and our next step plans. First, on user trends and related metrics. Tantan's domestic DAU showed robust growth momentum after Chinese New Year. In mid-February, the growth trend was disrupted by the escalation of the COVID-19 outbreak, and DAU started declining rapidly. By early May, the epidemic within China got largely under control, and the social distancing measures were largely relaxed. After the May holiday, we were able to see dating sentiment and the user engagement gradually coming back. By the end of June, Tantan's domestic DAU had rebounded by around 10% from the bottom seen in early April. Now, briefly on user trends outside China. Since the beginning of 2020, we've been pulling back the resources from developing countries such as Indonesia and India and beefing up the efforts in developed regions instead. As I mentioned before, our overseas strategy is primarily geared towards revenue and profit. Although developing countries can provide a large user base, the ARPU we can get under the subscription model from those regions is too low to scale the profit in a meaningful way. While in the developed markets where the ARPU is much higher, we see greater opportunities to obtain better ROI off a much smaller user base. As a result of this strategic shift, the overseas DAU trended down in the first half of 2020, but revenues from our overseas markets continue to grow at a healthy pace, despite the headwind from the COVID-19 pandemic. Within our overseas development plan, we still see huge growth opportunities in the developing countries. However, based on our understanding of user behavior and psychology, we believe that as compared with a subscription model, pay-per-use value-added services should make much better sense in terms of ROI in developing markets. Our strategy here is to go back into these markets once we establish a solid non-subscription revenue model in China. Now turning to paying users. Paying users for the second quarter on Tantan totaled 3.9 million, down from 4.2 million last quarter. As Tang Zong mentioned earlier, COVID not only hurt the DAU, but also adversely affected the propensity to pay from active users. As a result, during the social distancing period, the paying ratio saw a meaningful decrease, and the recovery of it also lagged the recovery of the overall DAU, causing a temporary lag between the resumption of paying user growth and the rebound in DAU. As we entered into Q3, the lagging effect began to tail out, and the paying user count has been catching up. As a matter of fact, as of August 31st, the number of paying users has bounced back to 4.1 million with a continuous upward trend. Now briefly on revenues. Total revenues for the second quarter reached 517.2 million, up 82% year-on-year and 35% quarter-on-quarter, driven by the strong momentum from the live broadcasting business, which significantly lifted the ARPPU. The subscription business showed a downward trend in the second quarter, largely due to the COVID impact. To a lesser extent, the introduction of live streaming business also had some negative impact on the subscription business, which was within our expectation. Based on the A/B testing results, the cannibalistic effect is about 10 to 15% of the subscription revenue, which is quite manageable. With the continuous recovery of DAU, we expect Tantan's VAS business to resume growth in Q3. Now, let me give you an update on the progresses that we made on a number of other strategic fronts during Q2. First of all, enriching the product experiences. In the second quarter, we significantly accelerated the efforts in building features and services beyond the core swiping experience. The goal is to improve the long-term retention on Tantan, which is a critical factor in the user growth equation. In April, we fully launched the Nearby Post feature. It allows Tantan users to discover new relationships and build interactions over content, rather than purely based on the profile information of the swiping system. As a related operational effort, we introduced the hashtag section within the post so that the users would have interesting and meaningful topics to talk about, which further helps Tantan's users more effectively connect with each other. In mid-April, we started fast-tracking another important project, the testing of live streaming service on Tantan. Up until now, the live broadcasting service has already covered millions of DAUs on the platform. The data that we have seen so far has proven two important things that provide guiding value on our future path of development. Number one, if handled properly, live broadcasting and potentially other peripheral experiences can be complementary to the core dating experience, especially for users who find it less effective to connect and interact based on the swipe and match mechanism. And number two, Tantan has a great deal of growth potential lying in live broadcasting as well as in other forms of pay-per-use value-added services. Looking into the rest of the year, our primary focus for live broadcasting service is to improve the product experience. A lot of what we do will revolve around improving the recommendation engine, beefing up the content experience, and testing ways to better integrate live streaming service into the application so that it can serve more Tantan users in need. We would also like to carefully manage the pace of revenue growth to avoid any unexpected adverse impact on the dating ecosystem. As we push the boundaries on the product side, we also believe that what defines Tantan is our core mission, which is to help young people discover new relationships and build interactions for romantic purpose. The core swipe and match experience continues to play the most important role in accomplishing that mission. Therefore, while diversifying into other product experiences, we also dedicate significant resource in making the core dating experience better. Currently, we have several key projects in the testing phase, such as revamping the profile page with enhanced personal description and content, as well as furthering the real person verification system from photo verification to ID card verification. All of these product efforts aim at delivering a better dating experience to Tantan users in a more secure environment. This is still the single most important value that we would like to deliver to our users. This is also the single most important goal we need to accomplish in order to keep expanding our user base. Everything else will be secondary to that mission. Under that same principle, on the monetization side, we are also working hard to develop new VAS service features based on the core dating experience. Some of these are new features, and some of these involve repackaging and repricing the existing features. The lab results have come back quite positive, so we are very optimistic about the growth opportunities for VAS in the second half and beyond. Those are the key things that I'd like to cover for today. Now let me pass the call over to Mr. Jonathan Zhang for financial review. John, please.
Thanks. Hi everyone, thank you for joining our conference call today. Let me briefly take you through the financial review. Total revenue for the second quarter 2020 was 3.87 billion RMB, down 7% year-on-year, up 8% quarter-over-quarter. Non-GAAP net income attributable to Momo was 669.8 million RMB compared to 1.24 billion RMB from the same period 2019, or a 46% decrease year-over-year. During the second quarter, the company repatriated 2.2 billion RMB from the WFOE legal entity in China and incurred 220 million RMB in income tax expenses. Excluding this special item, non-GAAP net income for the quarter would have been 889.8 million RMB. Let me jump directly into the review of cost and expenses items, as revenue line items are covered comprehensively by Wang Li and Wang Yu. Our non-GAAP cost of revenue for the second quarter of 2020 was 2.01 billion RMB, compared to 2.04 billion for the same period last year. Non-GAAP cost of revenue as a percentage of total revenue was 52%, increased from 49% in Q2 2019. Non-GAAP gross profit margin for Q2 2020 was down by 3 percentage points year-on-year. The decrease was attributed to the following 4 factors. Number 1, higher payout ratio from live broadcasting business on Momo due to higher revenue contribution from agency represented broadcasters. Number 2, higher payout ratios from VAS business due to the strong momentum coming from the audio and video social entertainment business, a bigger part of which involved third-party professional hosts. Number 3, lower gross margin from Tantan, as its live broadcasting business is becoming sizable during the quarter. And lastly, certain fixed nature cost items such as headcounts and depreciation of fixed assets related impacted the gross margin negatively as total revenue declined, and those items represented a higher percentage of total revenue. Non-GAAP R&D expenses for the second quarter was 226.6 million RMB compared to 204.8 million RMB for the same quarter last year, representing 5.9% and 4.9% of the total revenue respectively. The increase in R&D expenses was mainly due to the headcount increase. We ended the quarter with 2,362 total employees, of which 712 are from Tantan. The R&D personnel as a percentage of total employees for the group was 60% compared to 54% during the Q2 last year. Non-GAAP sales and marketing expenses for the second quarter was 590.7 million RMB, or 15.3% of total revenue, compared to 502.3 million RMB, or 12.1% of total revenue for the same period last year. The year-over-year increase in sales marketing expenses was mainly due to the higher marketing spending for Tantan, as well as marketing spending for Momo on new product initiatives. On a sequential basis, the sales and marketing expenses decreased by 8% because of the marketing spending in connection with Momo's year-end live broadcasting gala event, which happened in early January this year. Non-GAAP G&A expenses was 91.9 million RMB for the second quarter 2020, compared to 119.4 million RMB for the same quarter last year, representing 2.4% and 2.9% of total net revenue respectively. Non-GAAP operating income was 1.04 billion RMB, a decrease of 28% from Q2 2019, representing 26.8% non-GAAP operating margin for the quarter, down 8 percentage points from the same period last year. Now briefly on income taxes. The company repatriated 2.2 billion RMB from our WFOE in China to our offshore entity in Q2 in order to replenish our US dollar funding. In accordance with respective taxation laws of China, the company paid 10% or 220 million RMB withholding tax to Chinese tax authorities. This payment was recorded as income tax expenses for the company during the second quarter 2020. Excluding the withholding tax payments, our non-GAAP effective tax rate would have been around 21% in Q2 2020. Now turning to the balance sheet and cash flow items. As of June 30, 2020, Momo's cash equivalents, short-term deposits, and long-term deposits totaled 15.38 billion RMB compared to 15.23 billion RMB as of December 31st, 2019. In Q2, the company paid approximately an equivalent of 1.1 billion RMB special cash dividends to Momo's shareholders. Net cash provided by operating activities in the second quarter was 8 and 7.3 million RMB. Lastly, on the business outlook, we estimated our third quarter revenue to come in the range from 3.7 billion RMB to 3.8 billion RMB, representing a decrease of 16.9% to 14.6% year-on-year, and a decrease of 4.3% to 1.8% quarter-over-quarter. Please be mindful that this forecast represents the company's current and preliminary view on the market and operational conditions, which are subject to change. That concluded our prepared portion of today's discussion. With that, let me turn the call back to Kathy for Q&A.
Yeah, just a quick reminder before we take the questions. For those who can speak Chinese, please ask your question in Chinese first, followed by English translation by yourself. And also please limit the number of questions to maximum 2, so that everybody gets opportunity to ask questions. Operator, ready for Q&A, please.
Certainly. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. If you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. If you wish to cancel your request, please press the pound or hash key. Your first question comes from the line of Thomas Chong of Jefferies. Please ask your question.
晚上好，谢谢管理层接受我的提问。我有2个问题。第一个呢是可不可以先谈一下呢？Momo 直播业务的调整呢，对下半年的收入跟利润呢的影响呢，会来自那一个方面。如果可以有一些比较量化的指引呢，会很有帮助。另外的话呢，管理层对于 Q4 之后呢，更长期的直播业务或者是整体收入的trend 呢，会不会有什么方向性的指引？That's my first question. And my second question is about the second half outlook on Tantan, especially around the key metrics such as paying users and revenue. On top of that, if there's any separate color for live streaming and the fast line would be appreciated. Thank you.
Let me take a couple of minutes to translate the first question. I think Thomas wanted to understand the how exactly the overall adjustment plan is gonna impact the revenue in the second half of the year, and also would appreciate management to provide some quantitative guidance regarding the specific impact from the adjustments, and also what's management's view about the longer term revenue trends from Momo Core's live broadcasting business, as well as the overall top line at the company level.
谢谢，这2个问题呢，我来回答一下吧。那这个刚才给大家介绍过，Momo直播业务的调整措施呢，会涉及到产品和运营的很多方面。 其中一些措施在实施初期会对一部分现有的头部用户和主播产生负面的影响。另外从这个赛事和工会运营方面呢，我们也会由营收导向转向内容导向。那这两个方面的调整都会给收入带来短期的比较大的负面影响。第三个方向的调整呢，主要是为了繁荣中小直播间内容生态搞的一系列运营活动。公司对这些活动呢会有相应的投入所以对毛利会产生一些影响。那至于这些
Let me translate the first part. As we mentioned in the prepared remarks, the adjustment plan that we are currently implementing is touching many different areas on the product side and on the operational side. Some of the measures, when initially implemented, are going to have some negative impacts on some of the top users and some of the top broadcasters as well. In addition, we are also making adjustments to the KPI system of the agencies, as well as restructuring the way we build the competition events. And the principle here is to gear these systems more toward content improvements rather than purely focused on meeting revenue targets. So as you can see, the adjustments on those fronts are going to put some short-term pressure on revenues. And there's this third direction that we're moving toward, which involves holding a series of promotional events in order to revive the long-tail content ecosystem. For these events, the company is going to put in respective investments, which is going to have some negative impact on gross margins.
那另外呢，对调整相关的短期财务影响的量化呢，这些调整计划当中，对收入短期负面影响最大的措施，我们在8月初已经启动了。那这些措施在最初的几个星期对收入的影响是最为剧烈的，但这个阶段呢应该已经过去了。公司直营里隐含陌陌主 App 直播环比会出现一个10%几的下滑。8月份中旬以来，我们的内容生态已经开始呈现一些初步的改善迹象。那收入呢也从8月上旬的谷底出现了初步的回暖。那这令我们有信心，陌陌直播在 Q4 呢会是一个企稳回升的趋势。
In terms of quantifying the short-term financial impact, among the different measures that we are deploying, the ones with relatively bigger short-term impacts are already in the system. We sort of put them in early August timeframe. And the bulk of the impact should be seen during the first several weeks after implementation, which is to say that most likely the worst of the impact is already behind us. In the guidance that we give, we are modeling in a more than 10% sequential decline in the live broadcasting revenue on the core. Since the middle of August, we have started seeing some initial signs for improvement in the content ecosystem, and the revenue has also been showing some initial signs for recovery from the trough that we saw in early August timeframe. And these give us the confidence that as we move into Q4, the live broadcasting revenue on the core should see stabilization with a gradual uptick.
至于利润的方面公司对于一些内容项目的运营活动的补贴呢，可能会持续一段时间直到生态调整到位。预计这个部分会对毛利率产生2到3个点的一个影响。但就公司净利润绝对额来说的话，Q3 会是一个低点。那么 Q4 呢，随着营收的持续改善，那净利润呢也会开始改善。
With regards to the margins and also the profitability trend, the subsidies that we are putting into the promotional events for content are probably going to last for some time until we feel that we reach a satisfactory level with the overall adjustment plan. This part is going to press the gross margin down by 2 to 3 percentage points. But if you look at the net income of the company in absolute dollar amount, I think Q3 is going to be the bottom. As we move into Q4, the net income of the company is going to see improvement as the overall top line continues to improve.
最后呢，就这个集团整体的一个中长期的收入趋势而言的话 那探探作为公司的另外一个增长引擎，已经开始能够提供一个比较强的动能，再加上 VAS 的稳定增长，大家可以看到即便是在 Q3 这样一个进行深入结构性调整的情况下，集团整体的收入环比只出现了微降，可以说是一个比较稳定的状态。那么明年探探和 VAS 也仍然会有很好的增长机会。随着Momo主平台直播业务的调整到位，以及收入的企稳回升，我们预计明年Momo整体的收入情况会比2020年有显著的改善。
If we try to think about the overall revenue at the company level over a medium toward longer term horizon, here are some thoughts. Tantan as the second growth engine of the company is clearly gaining traction now, and the VAS business on the core has also been growing at a pretty solid pace. And because of the strength coming from these two parts, we can see that even during Q3, where the worst of the short-term impact from the structural reform is going to fall into, the overall revenue at the company level is still able to maintain a pretty stable sort of state with only a slight downtick from the prior quarter. So moving into next year, at this point, we're still seeing pretty good growth opportunities around VAS and especially around Tantan. And for the live broadcasting revenue on the core, as we move out of the transition period, the revenue is also going to start improving. So we do expect the overall top line of the company to perform much better next year versus the year 2020. I think the second question is for
Okay. So paying users has already resumed growth, and like I said, up until end of August, it has gone back to 4.1 million with a continuous upward trend. But there's one thing that I'd like to call out here. We're currently testing a differentiated pricing strategy for the membership business to maximize the revenue. But according to the testing results, this could slow down the growth of the number of subscribers in Q3 due to the higher average pricing of the bundled packaging. For the live broadcasting business, our focus for now is on user experience. This would include improving content and recommendation engine, as well as better integrating live broadcasting into the overall app. Revenue is not the top priority this year. Run rate wise, we would like to keep within 5 million RMB grossing per day during Q4. Now that the traffic is coming back, I want the rest of the year to be more about new VAS features than live broadcasting revenue. As for VAS, membership business has resumed growth in Q3. For the rest of the year, we're looking at several drivers for the VAS line. The overall DAU growth, that's number one. Number two, we will be launching a new SVIP package towards end of Q3, the one I just mentioned, which is supposed to be a driver of the membership business according to the lab results. Number three, currently we also have a few other new VAS features that we're testing, which could come out either this year or next. Some of them are subscription based and some might be a la carte features. Value-added services based on the core dating experience is crucial to user experience in Tantan. So VAS will continue to be an extremely important piece in our revenue mix. Thank you.
Operator,
Thank you.
ready for next?
Your next question comes from the line of Tian Hao of TH Capital. Please ask your question.
谢谢管理层，我也是2个问题，一个呢是关于生态调整，那么生态调整，实际上谁也不知道到最后是怎么样运营嘛，有很多尝试错误的过程。那么在我们这次比较大的生态调整过程当中，那管理层会用哪些指标来衡量这个调整的一个结果？我一会儿一块翻嘛。第二个问题是关于探探，那现在探探的直播呢也已经起来了，那我想看就是说未来探探在收入结构上是以直播为主呢，还是以那个会员为主？我自己翻译吧。So So as of the ecosystem adjustment, operation-wise, there can be a lot of a try and error process. So what are some kind of a matrix that management use to measure the outcome or effectiveness of the ecosystem adjustment? That's the first question. The second question is live streaming in Tantan starting to take off. So in the future, what is the revenue mixture is going to look like? How the live broadcasting and subscription going to be in terms of their proportion in the revenue composition? Thank you.
谢谢。那我先回答一下这个生态调整的问题。那我们这个生态调整的措施呢，主要分几个方向。那首先是针对这个集中度就是主要这个针对这个超头部用户和主播的收入占比以及付费人数的提升。那其次呢是这个内容上的指标包括直播间 DAU 以及观看时长、主播的开播路数和时长。那一些深度的产品调整呢，我们在每个阶段会有不同的量化指标去衡量。这部分之后呢，会跟大家做一些更加细节的讨论。那除了这些可量化的指标之外呢，要衡量内容生态的改善，那一些非量化的指标也是非常重要的。直播间是不是热闹好玩日常的 PK 和各种赛事的激烈程度以及观赏性，用户的消费体验和感受主播和工会的体验和感受，那他们是不是能够有良好的这个收入利润水平，这些都是重要的一个衡量的标准。然后呢，这个内容生态的改变呢，并非一朝一夕的一个工作了，那需要管理层对于长期主义的决心和耐心以及一个怎么说呢，循序渐进的一个过程吧。那我们希望通过半年左右的时间来推动这些生态项指标的一个逐步改善。
The adjustment measures that we are currently implementing are going into several key areas. In the area of reducing the concentration, here we will be looking at the revenue contribution from the super top of the pyramid users as well as some of the super top of the pyramid performers. And we will, of course, also be looking at the number of paying users of the live broadcasting business on the core. In terms of content improvement, here we'll be looking at the number of DAUs in the live broadcasting channels and their respective viewing time, and also the number of active broadcasters on daily basis and their respective broadcasting time. For some of the deeper level product adjustments, we're going to be looking at different gauging factors at different stages. I think this is an area where we can probably further the discussion after the call when we have more time. Other than the quantitative measures, some of the more qualitative gauging factors are also extremely important for us to make sure that we are on the right track and move toward the right direction with the adjustment plan. And these factors include whether it's fun to stay in the live broadcasting channels, whether the daily PK events and other form of competition events are intensive and compelling to watch, the overall experience of the consumers, how do they feel, and the overall experience of the broadcasters and agencies, how do they feel, whether they can build up a reasonably good level of revenue and profits. All of these are important things that we're going to be looking at. The other thing that I like to point out here is that the changes to the content ecosystem is not going to happen overnight. It requires the commitment and the patience from the management, also the focus on long-termism. And the changes will happen over a progressive basis. We're hoping that we could use 6 months period of time to drive gradual changes to these, the above mentioned quantitative and qualitative measures around the content ecosystem. And the second question.
Yeah. So total ARPU wise, I think Tantan will be similar to Momo, and it could even be higher than Momo over time, given the rising consumption power of the new generation. But in terms of revenue mix, I think it will be different because Tantan's users are much more focused on the core dating experience. So I believe that ultimately the VAS will very likely be a higher percentage of the total revenue than live broadcasting. Thank you.
Thank you. Quite clear.
Operator? Sorry, Tian. Operator, given time, we're ready to take one last question, and then please come back to me for closing. Thank you.
Your last question comes from the line of Lei Zhang of Bank of America. Please ask your question.
Hi， 管理层晚上好谢谢接受我的提问。然后我有很快的2个问题吧，一个还是想recap 一下，就是探探这一块，我们现在对竞争有没有一个什么新的看法？因为最近的话，我们自己的 traffic 其实也是 rebound 的，但是有一些我们的对手其实它跟我们的 gap 也是在削减的，所以在竞争层面来看，想听一下管理层新的想法。还有一个就是探探这边我们的对 bottom line 有没有什么预期？我们之前讲的可能明年年中的一个 break even 国内的这个 target， 现在看是不是还是可以做到？然后我自己翻译一下Thanks management for taking my question. Two quick questions. One on the competition of in the dating area. Do you say can you give us an update view on the competitive landscape here? And secondly, on the bottom line of Tantan, any change of our guidance in terms of break even in mid next year? Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of competitors, we've never been too focused on competition, and we don't really feel any strong or direct competition that we should be worried about. I think that in terms of connecting young singles that could potentially have romantic connection to meet offline, we are by far the market leader currently. So that's for question number 1. And in terms of question number 2, in Q3, we're going to spend a bit more to grow the user base because usually the summer holiday time presents a good opportunity for marketing. Therefore, net income could be pretty flattish versus Q2. Moving into Q4, revenue will continue to grow meaningfully from both VAS and live streaming. So even if we continue to spend heavily on marketing, we're still likely to see the break-even point by the end of the year, but that's not a must-happen for us. The strong top-line growth should continue into next year, which means that 2021 will most likely be a profit-making year for Tantan, unless we should see huge investment opportunities that we have to pursue at the expense of profitability, which we're not seeing at this point. Thank you.
另外关于这个问题呢，我想补充一下，对，就是关于这个开放式社交领域的竞争呢，那其实最终看的是哪个产品能够帮助用户更好的发现新关系，并且有效互动。那Momo团队在这方面呢，已经有这个9年多的一个经验，那探探也有6年的经验。期间我们也经历过用户使用习惯的变化，以及各种直接的或者间接的竞争。有专注于开放式社交的平台，也有大流量平台或者工具性平台向开放性社交延展的。但Momo呢，在这个领域的一个领导地位呢，一直是非常稳固的。这证明了Momo和探探团队在开放式社交领域的能力。我们也非常有信心在这个领域继续的领先下去。那另一方面呢，公司呢也有专业的团队和相应的机制，定期对行业竞争情况进行跟踪和分析，来确保公司对于任何潜在的竞争者保持敏感同时也确保Momo能够长期的在我们的领域处于绝对的优势地位这方面的话，投资人可以放心。
Okay, so just quickly several points to the first question regarding the competition. I think any sort of competition within the open social space will ultimately boil down to one question, and that the single most important question is who can build the right product to help the users better discover new relationships and build meaningful interactions. On that front, Momo Momo's team has over 9 years of experience, and Tantan also has around 6 years of experience. And during that multiple years time, we've seen user behavioral changes, and we've gone through multiple rounds of direct and indirect competitions. Some of the competitions came from more focused players in the open social space, and some of the competitions came from ubiquitous application much bigger ubiquitous application trying to expand into our territory. But I'm happy to see that after all these years and all these changes, Momo is still the dominant player in the respective territory that we are in. That speaks to the capabilities of Momo's team and also Tantan's team in the open social space. We are very confident that this is the area where we will continue to be leading down the path. And the other thing is that the company has built up a comprehensive system and also has a professional team to follow and analyze the competitive landscape on a regular basis. And this is to make sure that the company always remain vigilant about what's coming up around the corner. And also this is also to make sure that the company stays at a leading position in the territory that we are in. So I think this is an area where investors do not need to be too concerned about. That concludes the conference call today. Thanks for joining the conference call. We'll see you next quarter. Operator, ready to close.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our conference. So thank you for participating. You may now all disconnect.